The most powerful block in quantum manifestation is not doubt, fear, or a lack of belief. Those are visible. You can identify them, talk about them, and even try to work through them consciously. The real block is far more subtle, and because it doesn't announce itself emotionally, most people never realize it's there. It's the internal contradiction between what you say you want and what your system is actually emitting into the quantum field every single day. This contradiction is what we'll call the quantum knot. A quantum knot forms when desire exists only at the level of thought, while the body, nervous system, and identity remain anchored to an entirely different state. You may want abundance, freedom, love, or expansion, but if your internal baseline is still tuned to control, protection, urgency, or lack, the signal becomes incoherent, and the quantum field does not respond to words, wishes, or mental effort. It responds to coherence. This is where manifestation quietly breaks down. From the outside, it looks like effort without movement. From the inside, it feels confusing, frustrating, and often personal, as if you're doing everything right and still not seeing results. But the issue isn't effort. In fact, effort is often the very thing tightening the knot. Quantum physics explains this with brutal clarity. Reality reorganizes when a system reaches coherence, meaning all parts of the system are aligned and broadcasting the same signal. When thought says one thing, emotion says another, and the nervous system is braced for an outcome it doesn't trust, the signal fragments. And fragmented signals don't collapse new realities. They stabilize the current one. This is why you can consciously desire change while subconsciously reinforcing the same patterns. Why you can visualize a new life while your body prepares for disappointment. Why you can speak affirmations while your nervous system stays in survival mode. The field doesn't choose the loudest signal. It responds to the most consistent one. Neuroscience reveals why this happens so automatically. When the brain is locked in chronic beta states, stress, overthinking, vigilance, and constant monitoring, it becomes predictive rather than creative. It loops familiar scenarios, scans for threats, and resists uncertainty. In this state, the brain has limited access to alpha and theta rhythms, the very states associated with imagination, learning, and neural reorganization. In other words, the more you stress about manifesting, the more you trap yourself in the exact neurological state that prevents change. The knot tightens, not because you're doing something wrong, but because your system is trying to protect you from instability. Spiritually, this mechanism has been described for centuries. Neville Goddard called it resistance, the inability to assume the state of the wish fulfilled, not because the mind doesn't understand the concept, but because emotionally and somatically, the old identity hasn't been released. The fear, the attachment, the doubt, the need for reassurance, all of that lives in the body, not the intellect. That emotional resistance is the knot. It shows up as wanting something while simultaneously preparing for it not to happen, as desiring expansion while staying loyal to familiar limitation, as imagining a new future while you're emotionally rehearsing the past. These contradictions don't cancel each other out, they compound. This is why the quantum field doesn't respond to begging, hoping, or trying harder. Those states broadcast misalignment. They communicate that desire exists, but identity does not. And without identity coherence, reality cannot reorganize safely or sustainably. The quantum knot is not punishment, it's regulation. The field delays outcomes that would destabilize you if they arrived while your internal system was still split. So instead of delivering what you asked for, reality waits for the signal to become clean. And here's the part almost no one talks about. You don't untie a knot by pulling harder. You untie it by reducing tension. Knots respond to relaxation, not force. And the same is true here. What if the block holding your life in place isn't something you need to fix, analyze, or overcome? What if it's something you need to stop tightening? What if the moment you stop forcing alignment through thought, the system naturally begins to soften? Because the quantum field has never been waiting for you to want more. It's been waiting for you to stop contradicting yourself. And until that contradiction dissolves, no affirmation, visualization, or technique will override the signal being broadcast beneath the surface. In the next part, we're going to break down exactly how this quantum knot forms inside the nervous system and why stress, urgency, and effort are the primary reasons so many people stay stuck right before a major shift. The quantum knot doesn't form because you lack discipline, belief, or spiritual knowledge. It forms because your nervous system learned to survive in a reality that no longer matches what you're asking for. And survival patterns don't dissolve just because the mind wants something new. This is where most manifestation conversations fall apart. They stay at the level of thought, intention, and visualization, while the real work is happening somewhere much deeper in the body, in the nervous system, in the unconscious patterns that decide what feels safe, familiar, and believable before a single conscious thought appears. When the nervous system is locked into chronic stress, it operates almost entirely in beta brainwaves. This is the state of constant thinking, scanning, planning, anticipating, and correcting. It's efficient for problem solving and short-term survival, but it's incompatible with quantum creation. In beta, the system is not receptive, it's defensive, and defense is a broadcast. From a neurological perspective, chronic beta creates looping predictions. The brain becomes less interested in novelty and more invested in confirming what it already knows, even if what it knows is limitation, struggle, or delay. The system prefers the familiar over the unknown, because familiarity feels safer than possibility. This is how the knot tightens. You consciously want expansion, but your nervous system keeps rehearsing protection. You imagine a new future, but your body prepares for loss, disappointment, or instability. The mind tries to move forward while the body quietly pulls the brakes. The quantum field receives that mixed signal instantly. Quantum physics doesn't separate mind from body. The observer is the entire system. When that system is incoherent, reality doesn't know which version of you to respond to, so it responds to the one that's most stable, the survival identity you've practiced the longest. This is why effort often backfires. Effort comes from beta. Effort is a signal that something is missing and must be chased, and the more you effort, the more you reinforce the identity of someone who doesn't have what they want yet. The knot doesn't loosen, it cinches. Joe Dispenza describes this as the body becoming the mind. The emotional and physiological state dominates, regardless of what the intellect believes. Until the body feels safe enough to release old patterns, the mind has very little creative authority. Spiritually, this is the same truth Neville Goddard pointed to when he said, "You must assume the state of the wish fulfilled, not imagine it occasionally, but inhabit it somatically, feel it as normal." And that's impossible when the nervous system is still signaling threat, urgency, or lack. The quantum knot, therefore, is not a mindset issue, it's a state issue. And states don't change through force, they change through regulation. When the nervous system begins to exit chronic stress, something subtle happens. Brainwaves slow, alpha and theta become accessible again. These are the states where imagination integrates with physiology, where identity becomes flexible, where new patterns can actually take root. In these states, the system is no longer trying to protect the past, it becomes available for the future. This is why manifestation often feels easier when people stop obsessing over it, not because desire disappears, but because regulation replaces urgency. The system stops broadcasting contradiction. You're no longer saying, "I want this, but I don't trust it." You're no longer saying, "I desire this, but I need to control it." You're no longer saying, "I imagine this, but I'm preparing for disappointment." Those signals dissolve, and when they dissolve, the knot loosens naturally. This is also why timing feels strange. During this phase, progress doesn't look linear. There may be periods of stillness followed by sudden movement. That's not delay, that's recalibration. The system is learning how to hold a new state without snapping back into old defenses. The field is patient because coherence matters more than speed. A reality that arrives too early collapses. A reality that arrives when the knot is loose stabilizes quickly. Understanding this changes how you relate to the process. You stop trying to fix yourself. You stop forcing positivity. You stop negotiating with time. Instead, you begin allowing your system to settle. And settling is not passive, it's intelligent. It's the system learning that it no longer needs to protect against a future that's already aligned. In the next part, we're going to go even deeper into how emotional attachment, fear, and over-identification with outcomes are the final strands of the knot, and why releasing them feels uncomfortable right before everything shifts. Once the nervous system begins to settle, the quantum knot doesn't disappear immediately. What remains is more subtle and often more difficult to release.
This final layer is emotional attachment, not desire itself, but the need for the desire to resolve something inside you, the need for it to prove safety, worth, or certainty. This is where many people get confused. They assume attachment means caring too much, but attachment isn't intensity, attachment is dependency. It's the internal belief that something external must arrive for you to finally relax, feel whole, or move forward. And that belief creates one of the strongest incoherences a system can broadcast. From the perspective of the quantum field, attachment signals instability, not because wanting is wrong, but because attachment says, I am not complete yet, and the field mirrors that state faithfully. It doesn't punish it, it reflects it. This is why manifestation often stalls right before breakthrough. The desire is clear, the intention is set, the nervous system is beginning to regulate, but emotionally there is still gripping, still watching, still waiting for the outcome to relieve tension. And that tension keeps the knot intact.